Welcome to Halloween Central. I'm Joseph Payne, here to talk to you about how this spooky holiday got started. The origins of Halloween go back over 2,000 years before the birth of Christianity. We turn our attention to the ancient Celtic lands, which in modern times are known as Ireland and Scotland. The ancient Celts, like many groups in Europe who were referred to as pagans, had many beliefs strongly rooted in being in touch with nature and the spirit world. For context, Northern Europe had especially harsh winters given the location on the planet and limited medicines and technology of the time. Winter was often a dark time for the Celts, who would experience a high volume of deaths from the cold each year. This, along with the dying plant life, made winter associated with death by the Celts. So every year they had to prepare as best they could during the harvest time. October 31st was seen as the exact middle point between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice, when the veil that separated the realm of the dead from our living realm was at its thinnest. Thin enough that spirits of the dead, as well as other beings who never existed in human form, could cross over into our world. Some of the spirits would be those of past loved ones, but the belief was that most of the spirits that crossed over would cause chaos in the land of the living, especially in the form of pranks that would annoy the living or sometimes threaten their well-being. Many evil spirits and creatures were thought to destroy the crops that the people so desperately needed to survive the dark winter. It was also believed that the thin veil granted Celtic priests the temporary power to glimpse into the future and thus guide the people on how to survive the oncoming weather conditions. According to the Celtic calendar, October 31st marked the end of the year, and November 1st marking the first day of the new year, which will come back to the 31st becoming All Hallows Eve. The Celts' reaction to this time of the thin veil and the end of the year was to hold an annual festival called Samhain. Yes, the word in English is spelled Samhain, but keep in mind this is a Gaelic word by origin, so it uses a Gaelic pronunciation. During the festival of Samhain, the priests would start big bonfires and the people would gather around them to take part in more traditions. One of them was dressing up in disguises as animals or various creatures of the night so that they would be invisible to any evil spirits that crossed over. This originated the tradition of dressing up in costumes on Halloween, not for fun, but for protection. Another practice during this time was to ask the priest for a glimpse into the future, usually to know what to expect from the coming winter, but also questions about good or bad personal fortunes. Some Celts even tried to tell each other's fortunes. But a darker tradition of Samhain was offering sacrifices to appease the spirits for a peaceful and safe winter. Sacrifices in the form of a few crops, or animals, and sometimes self-sacrifices by humans. The information on human sacrifices is a bit sketchy, since much of the records of Samhain are only in the form of Celtic literature or records written by the conquering Romans who had a bias against the Celts and may have therefore exaggerated or flat out made some stuff up about the Celtic holiday. Although there is still plenty of information about Samhain that has remained consistent from each source out there. After the festival is over, the priests would use the fire from the bonfires to light hearth fires across the land and prepare for winter. In the 1st century after Christ's death and the spread of Christianity, the Roman Empire conquered much of Europe, including the Celtic lands. But rather than try to wipe out all traces of the Celts and their traditions, the Romans instead chose to fuse their traditions with some of their own to make it easier to convert the pagan people. Certain pagan deities were cast aside in all the blending, but the holidays themselves were merely modified to coincide with Roman holidays. One of these holidays was called Feralia, a Roman holiday that coincidentally took place around the same time as Samhain. This was a 2-day celebration, with the first day meant for honoring the dead, and the second for honoring Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. Many scholars believe that Pomona was the source of the popular Halloween game of bobbing for apples, as an apple was Pomona's symbol. Hundreds of years later, when Christianity has spread far and wide, the Catholic Church moved All Saints' Day, their own holiday for remembering priests who had passed on, from May 13th to November 1st. This was done in an effort to convert as many people as possible to Christianity. Additionally, November 2nd was declared All Souls' Day, a day specifically for remembering and honoring all of the dead. The day before November 1st was the Holy Eve of All Saints' Day, sometimes called All Hallows' Day, hence Samhain being changed into All Hallows' Eve. With this change came the end of sacrifices and any other traditions the church didn't see fit as part of Christianity, but most traditions such as bonfire gatherings and putting on masks and costumes to hide from bad spirits still remained. Sacrifices were replaced with offerings of food to the poor, and more celebratory practices like parades were included. Hundreds of years later, people began to shorten the name of All Hallows Eve into, you guessed it, Halloween. And the name of this day, once known as Samhain, has stuck ever since. When the first colonists arrived in America, many of them banned Halloween for a while. This was because the Puritans saw Catholicism as a threat to their beliefs and wanted to forbid any practice associated with the Catholics, which included the celebration of Halloween. The Catholics that wanted to keep Halloween alive mostly settled in protected states like Maryland and Pennsylvania. Over time, immigrants from other places came over and brought their own traditions and beliefs. The blending of all these beliefs slowly created an American version of Halloween that was still celebrated differently depending on the crowd. Many Americans began celebrating this day as a fun day full of singing and dancing and swapping ghost stories, but even then, Halloween hadn't yet been accepted as a holiday by the whole country. That was about to change. By now, the Celtic lands had divided into Ireland and Scotland, but the people kept the knowledge of Halloween traditions alive. In the 19th century, a wave of Scottish and Irish immigrants came to America to escape a potato famine and brought Halloween with them. Their knowledge of the true origins of the holiday and its traditions, along with their sheer numbers, greatly popularized Halloween. Other American traditions evolved from the original traditions, giving us the Halloween we know today. While Halloween has religious roots, it is celebrated as more of a secular holiday now. Anyone, regardless of their religion, gets into the spirit of the season. While there are still certain religious groups who see Halloween as an evil day and fear it, the majority of the country has grown to love this spooky holiday that's now celebrated in many ways by children and by adults. In future Halloween videos, I'll delve more into the history of specific traditions like carving jack-o'-lanterns and trick-or-treating, and I'll look at some more modern evolutions of the holiday. I hope you enjoyed this first Halloween history video. Subscribe for more Halloween videos that will be published all year long. Until next time, remember to live Halloween.